Good day, I am Christ and Silai, and today I am here to tackle about learners with physical disabilities, specifically speech impairment and multiple physical impairment under typology of learners with special needs. So let us first tackle about speech impairment. Speech impairments are disorders of speech sounds, fluency, or voice that interfere with communication, adversely affect performance and/or functioning in the educational environment, and result in the need of exceptional student education. So, there are types of sound disorders. First is speech sound disorder. It is a phonological or articulation disorder that is evidenced by the atypical production of speech sounds characterized by substitutions, distortions, additions, or omissions that interfere with intelligibility. Under the speech sound disorder are phonological disorder and articulation disorder. Phonological disorder is an impairment in the system of phonemes and phoneme patterns within the context of spoken language. Articulation disorder, on the other hand, is characterized by difficulty in the articulation of speech sounds that may be due to motoric or structural problem. Next disorder is what we call fluency disorder. It is characterized by deviations in continuity, smoothness, rhythm, or effort in spoken communication. It may be accompanied by excessive tension and secondary behaviors such as struggle and avoidance. Last one is voice disorder. A voice disorder is characterized by the typical production or absence of vocal quality, pitch, loudness, resonance, or duration of phonation. Speech disorders can make it hard to communicate. Someone may have trouble with articulation or the production of speech sounds such as lisping when a person substitutes the letters S and Z with TH. Next is voice or the pitch and volume of sounds made. And lastly, the fluency or the flow of speech such as stuttering or stammering. Sometimes, kids with speech disorders have oral motor problems. This means the muscles used to create speech aren't working properly. Speech disorders also can be related to conditions like a developmental delay, autism, a hearing disorder, weak muscles around the mouth, cleft lip or palate, hoarseness, and breathing or swallowing disorders. So ways speech and language disorders affect learning. A child diagnosed with speech-language disorder, and especially a receptive language disorder, will have difficulty understanding and processing verbal information. When that information is presented in the form of something the child is to remember for home or school, it can be difficult for the child to even understand what was said, let alone the ability to remember it. So how are we able to help learning for a child diagnosed with speech-language disorder? To help children diagnosed with speech-language disorders, remembering what was said or with following directions, it is best to break the information down into smaller chunks, with repetition as necessary until the child is able to encode all the information. Having written information to accompany what is being said can also be very helpful to the child. Sometimes, children who have difficult time with verbal information or instructions can be seen as less intelligent than they really are because they are not able to process the information as well as other students. This can lead to inappropriate placement in school settings. However, if the information is repeated or presented in an alternative way, the children may be able to perform on par with his or her peers. In addition, a child may be seen as ignoring what was said or even being defiant by not following through. This may lead to undue punishment, and this can be demoralizing to a child and discourage further attempts at learning. Let's move on to physical impairment. The physical capacity to move, coordinate actions, or perform physical activities is significantly limited. impaired, or delayed and is exhibited by difficulties in one or more of the following areas: physical and motor tasks, independent movement, performing basic life functions. The term shall include severe orthopedic impairments or impairments caused by congenital anomaly, cerebral palsy, amputations, and fractures if such impairment adversely affects a student's education performance. Characteristics of physically challenged children. There are many children who are born with physical disabilities. However, the disabilities do not have to limit their life or natural talents if they are supported and encouraged correctly. Although physically handicapped children do have to endure certain challenges, they are capable of fulfilling their dreams by learning how to adapt and adjust to certain situations instead of giving up. Physical limitations of a physically challenged children. Physically handicapped children are all challenged with physical limitations to some degree. Many physically challenged children suffer from a lack of coordination, weak muscles, stiff muscles, or no muscle strength at all. Let's have the emotional challenges of a physically handicapped child. It is important for parents, family members, friends, and teachers to monitor a physically disabled child's emotional state. At times, physical limitations can lead to frustration, anger, and sadness. The emotional outlook of the child is often directly impacted by the level of support and encouragement that is received from the people around him. It is important for physically disabled children to have people that they can talk to openly in order to discuss, understand, and resolve emotional issues. Learning abilities of physically handicapped children. Although some children with physical disabilities also have mental disabilities, many children are mentally strong and just as capable as any other child. It is important that parents and teachers encourage physically handicapped children to excel in school and discover their individual talents and strengths. With the correct support and encouragement, physically handicapped children can succeed in school and even surpass other classmates. Parents and teachers must recognize the gifts of the child and not limit them mentally because of physical disabilities. Dykes suggests 85% of health impaired and 35% of orthopedically handicapped children are served in special schools or classes. Often their needs vary. The greater needs of the physically handicapped children are in the areas of adaptive equipments. Often, they require wheelchairs, crutches, head pointers, arm and leg braces. Technological gap has narrowed down the gap in providing adequate educational instruction to students who cannot speak, move, or use hands. Physically handicapped children are passive, less persistent, having shorter attention span, engage them in less exploration, and display less motivation. They are more dependent on adults and interact less with peers. Facilitating independence and building self-esteem are two requirements for the physically handicapped children. The physically disabled has poor body image, high anxiety, and frustration. They are found to be quiet, conforming, tender-minded, and somewhat tense. Social relationships constitute a problem area for many crippled youngsters. Their capacity for frustration tolerance is lower than normal children. Difficulties of orthopedically handicapped arise out of several factors. Essentially, children with motor disabilities are not very different from normal boys and girls. Their handicap arises out of three factors. First is the society's attitude towards them. Next is the child's interpretation of this reaction to his limitation. And lastly, the discrepancy between aspiration and achievement. That's all, and thank you for watching.